Welcome to Motion English Podcast. I'm Emma and I'm so glad you're here. If this is your first time joining us, here's something great to know. We release a new English lesson every single day right here, all designed to help you speak more naturally, more confidently, and more fluently. In today's episode, we're not just going to listen, we're going to actively build your speaking skills, grow your vocabulary, and help you describe your everyday life with ease. This is one of those essential skills every English learner needs if they want to sound truly fluent. Talking about your day, from your very first sentences as a beginner all the way up to smooth. Advanced storytelling. We'll walk through real daily routines together, starting with simple morning phrases, moving into richer afternoon conversations, and eventually reaching more advanced ways to talk about your emotions, your experiences, and how you reflect on your day. Along the way, you'll pick up natural sentence patterns, useful vocabulary, and the kind of expressions native speakers actually use. This isn't just a lesson, it's practice for real life. Whether you want to talk about your morning, your work or school day, plans with friends, or how you felt at the end of it all, this episode will help you put your thoughts into clear, confident English. By the time we finish, you'll be able to describe your whole day using simple beginner phrases, expanded intermediate sentences, and more advanced, fluent expressions. Before we dive in, don't forget to follow Motion English Podcast so you never miss a lesson. Now get comfortable, take a breath, and if you'd like, keep a notebook nearby because today isn't just about learning vocabulary. It's about learning to tell the story of your day naturally in English. Let's jump in. There's something really satisfying about being able to talk about your day in English, not with short, choppy sentences, but in a way that flows and feels real. Your day is basically a story, and once you can tell that story clearly, you gain one of the most valuable speaking skills there is. So let's start simple and build up gradually, moving from beginner-friendly language toward the kind of fluency that lets you speak confidently, no matter the situation. Let's start with the morning, since that's where every day begins, and it's usually the easiest place to start practicing. Picture this: you've just woken up and a friend asks, "How was your morning?" A beginner might simply answer, "My morning was good." That works perfectly fine, it's clear and correct. But we can build on it. "I got up early today. I got out of bed around 7. I woke up feeling refreshed." Notice how each version adds a little more detail. That's exactly how fluency develops, not by throwing away the simple stuff, but by growing from it. Let's practice a few together. Try repeating these in your head as you go. I got up early this morning. I brushed my teeth and got myself ready. I had breakfast together with my family. I had a cup of tea. I looked at my phone right after waking up. These are everyday, realistic sentences, and the more you practice them calmly and slowly, the more naturally they'll come out when you're actually speaking. Once you feel more comfortable, you can start linking your actions together. After getting up, I headed to the kitchen. Once I brushed my teeth, I jumped in the shower. As soon as I finished eating, I got started on my work. Connecting ideas like this is what takes you from beginner to intermediate level, because in real life, things don't happen as isolated sentences, they happen as a sequence of events. Now let's put together a full beginner-level description of a morning. Imagine you're telling a friend about it. "This morning, I woke up around 7. I felt a bit groggy, but I made myself get up right away. I brushed my teeth, splashed water on my face, and took a quick shower. Then I sat down for breakfast. I had eggs and toast with a cup of coffee. After that, I got dressed and got ready to start my day." Notice how smooth and natural that sounds. That's the base you need for everyday fluency. Now let's add some emotion, because real fluency isn't only about what you did, it's about how you felt while doing it. Instead of just saying, "I got up early," try saying, "I got up early but I was still sleepy," or "I got up early and felt really motivated." Emotion is what makes your English feel human and alive. Let's try a few emotional expressions. "I woke up full of energy." "I woke up already stressed about work." "I really didn't want to get out of bed, it was just too cozy." "I felt excited about my plans for the day." When you include feelings, the person listening understands not just what happened, but what it was like for you. Let's move a little further into intermediate territory. Suppose someone asks, "What's your usual morning like?" You might say, "Normally I get up around 6:30. I like to stretch a little before actually leaving the bed. After that, I make myself something light to eat and put on some music while I have it. It really helps me ease into the day." Notice the flow, the extra detail, the personal style. That's conversational fluency taking shape. Try this longer version in your head too. In the mornings, I try to avoid picking up my phone right away. Instead, I like sitting quietly for a bit to think through my day. Sometimes I even jot down my goals in a notebook. It makes me feel more in control. This kind of English feels more thoughtful and mature compared to short beginner-level answers. Now let's build up some vocabulary around morning routines, since variety adds color to how you speak. Rather than always saying breakfast, you could say a light bite, a hearty meal, or a proper breakfast. Instead of tired, try worn out, drowsy, or drained. Instead of happy, try upbeat, thrilled, or positive. Using a range of vocabulary shows real progress in your English. Let's put some of that vocabulary into a full example. This morning I woke up feeling a bit worn out since I'd gone to bed late the night before. I got ready quickly and made myself a healthy breakfast. While I ate, I listened to a motivational podcast, and it really helped lift my mood for the rest of the day. That's already edging toward advanced fluency, and you're building it piece by piece. Now it's your turn to practice. Imagine you're talking directly to me. Try this pattern. Today I woke up at, pause and think. After I got up, I felt, pause again, then I, after that I. Before starting my day, I. This step-by-step structure trains your brain to think in English in sequence. As you get more comfortable, start adding time expressions, first, then, after that, later, finally. These words create a storytelling rhythm. For example, first I didn't feel like getting up. Then I remembered I had important things to do. After that, I got ready quickly. Finally, I left the house feeling prepared. See how your day starts to sound like an actual story. Let's try a slightly more advanced version, one that reflects on things not going as planned. My morning didn't go the way I expected. I overslept because my alarm didn't go off. I had to rush through everything. I ended up skipping breakfast, and that left me low on energy later. This kind of language describing a problem and its effect shows a more advanced level of fluency. Let's also practice contrast. Even though I got up late, I still made it to work on time. Despite feeling exhausted, I finished everything I needed to do. My morning started off rough, but it got better as the day went on. Using contrast like this is key for more sophisticated storytelling. Now let's slow down and put together a fuller, layered description of a morning. Let it play out naturally in your mind. This morning, I woke up earlier than I usually do. At first, I felt really groggy and didn't want to leave the bed, but after a few minutes, I pushed myself to get up. I stretched, drank a glass of water, and freshened up. After that, I made a simple but healthy breakfast. While eating, I thought about what I wanted to accomplish that day, which helped me feel more focused and ready. Notice the pattern: action, feeling, reflection. That combination is what gives your everyday English real fluency. Now let's shift gently toward the rest of the morning, because your day obviously doesn't end after breakfast. Maybe you head to work, to school, to college, or maybe you stay home. Every situation opens up new vocabulary. You could say, once I finished my morning routine, I headed out to work, or I logged into my online class, or I started on some chores around the house. Everyday English adapts to whatever your life looks like. And it becomes more fluent the more personal you make it. Let's build out a work-related example. I got to the office around 9. First, I went through my emails. Then I joined a team meeting where we talked about our goals for the week and some upcoming projects. That's practical, intermediate-level workplace English woven into your daily story. Or here's a version for students. I got to campus around 8:30. My first class was economics. I took detailed notes since the material felt important. During the break, I caught up with some classmates. Vocabulary related to school fits naturally into everyday speech this way too. Now let's bring emotion back into the picture. I felt really productive during that morning meeting. I was a little nervous before my presentation. I felt a wave of relief once I finished my assignment. Adding emotion to your storytelling takes your fluency even deeper. Let's now try combining several ideas into one late morning description. Once I got to work, I felt a little overwhelmed since I had so many things on my plate. I started by tidying up my desk and figuring out what needed my attention first. After putting together a task list, I felt a lot more in control of everything I had to do. This kind of speaking, where you describe your thought process, not just your actions, shows a deeper level of fluency. Take a moment now to think about your own late morning. Where were you? What were you doing? How did it make you feel? the more personal you make it, the more naturally it will come out. This is exactly how your everyday routine slowly turns into fluent English storytelling. As the day moves forward, your experiences naturally become richer. This is where your English can really expand, becoming more detailed and expressive, since the middle of the day usually brings the most activity, the most conversations, and the most chances to practice speaking. Let's move into the afternoon now, a time when your energy changes, your responsibilities increase, and your conversations become more specific to the situation. Imagine someone asks you, "How's your day going so far?" A beginner might answer, "My day is going good." That's simple and correct, but we can build on it. "My day has been pretty busy so far. It's been productive, it's been a bit stressful, but I'm managing." Notice how one simple question can lead to a much richer response. Let's look at some common afternoon routines. You might say, "In the afternoon, I usually tackle my biggest priorities," or "After lunch, I feel more relaxed and ready to keep working," or even, "The afternoon is actually when I have the most energy." Each of these reflects not just what you're doing, but your own personal rhythm throughout the day. Let's slow down and build a complete afternoon description together. "After wrapping up my morning tasks, I took a short break for lunch. I had some rice, vegetables, and a glass of juice. That meal really helped restore my energy. Afterward, I went for a quick walk outside and the fresh air left me feeling renewed. Then I got back to my desk and continued working." Notice the natural flow here: action, result, and what comes next. Now let's bring in some conversation, since afternoons often involve meetings, calls, and discussions with other people. You might say, "In the afternoon, I had a meeting with my boss. I talked to a client about how a project was going. I helped a coworker figure out a problem." These are the kinds of sentences that reflect everyday professional English. Let's expand one of these into a fuller example. "In the afternoon, I had a key meeting with my team. We went over our progress and talked about upcoming deadlines. At first, I felt a little nervous since I had to present my ideas, but once I got going, my confidence grew. My team liked what I suggested, and that made me feel really proud." This is a more advanced way of narrating your workplace experiences as part of your daily story. Let's also look at what an afternoon might look like for a student. "After lunch, I went to my second class. The topic was tough, so I really had to concentrate. I asked my professor a couple of questions to clear up my confusion. Later, I spent some time in the library working on an assignment." Routines like these help build vocabulary connected to school and studying. Let's add another layer of emotion, since afternoons can really test your focus, patience, and mood. You might say, "By the afternoon, I started to feel tired. My mind felt drained after working nonstop." Or, "Even though I was exhausted, I kept pushing myself to stay productive." This kind of language, showing emotional strength, reflects a higher level of fluency. Now let's build some cause and effect and contrast sentences. "Because I didn't have coffee in the morning, I felt drowsy in the afternoon. Since I'd already finished my main tasks earlier, I felt more relaxed later on. Because of a heavy workload, I wasn't able to take proper breaks." These connecting words add a more logical, sophisticated feel to your English. Let's try a guided speaking exercise. Imagine you're speaking out loud right now, describing your own afternoon using this pattern. "In the afternoon, I usually," pause. "Today, most of my afternoon was spent," pause. "Something interesting that happened was," "By the end of the afternoon, I felt." This kind of structure helps you keep your storytelling connected and flowing. Now let's grow your vocabulary around being productive. Instead of busy, you could say occupied, engaged, or overloaded. Instead of tired, try worn out, fatigued, drained, or burnt out. Instead of happy, you might say satisfied, accomplished, or fulfilled. Choosing more precise words really sharpens how fluent you sound. Let's put some of that vocabulary to use in a more advanced example. "My afternoon turned out to be incredibly productive. I stayed fully engaged with my tasks and managed to knock out several things that had been pending. Even though I felt a bit fatigued by the end of it, I also felt genuinely accomplished." This shows how the right vocabulary can elevate everyday speech. Now let's talk about afternoons that are more social, because not every afternoon revolves around work or study. Sometimes you catch up with friends, run errands, or just relax. You could say, "In the afternoon, I grabbed coffee with a friend. I went shopping. I visited some relatives. I played a sport." Everyday life like this gives you endless material to talk about. Let's build out one of these social examples. This afternoon, I met up with an old friend at a coffee shop. We hadn't seen each other in months, so there was a lot to catch up on. We talked about our lives, our careers, and our plans for the future. The whole conversation left me feeling nostalgic and genuinely happy. Combining emotion with the situation like this adds warmth to your storytelling. Let's also talk about unexpected moments, because real fluency includes those too. Say something unplanned happens in your afternoon. For example, your internet suddenly cuts out right in the middle of an important meeting. At first you panic, but then you quickly switch to your phone's data and manage to keep the call going. Being able to describe a problem and how you solved it is a really important part of everyday English. Let's practice reflecting on situations like that. Even though the situation stressed me out at first, it actually taught me how to stay calm under pressure. Reflective sentences like this show a more mature level of fluency. Now picture a full, layered description of an afternoon and let it flow naturally in your mind. After lunch, I went back to my desk and got back into my work. I had a few deadlines coming up, so I really focused. Around 3 p.m., I joined a virtual meeting with my team where we brainstormed and gave each other feedback. It was an intense but useful discussion. By late afternoon, I started to feel mentally worn out, so I took a short break to clear my head. Can you feel that rhythm building? That's what real storytelling fluency sounds like. Now let's move toward more advanced descriptive phrasing. Instead of saying, "I was busy all afternoon," you could say, "My afternoon was packed with back-to-back tasks," or "I barely had a second to catch my breath," or "The hours just flew by without me even noticing," using idiomatic expressions like these signals. More advanced level of English. Let's practice a few more idioms. I had so much on my plate that I was racing against the clock. I was juggling several tasks at once. I felt the pressure, but I managed to stay on track. These kinds of expressions sound very natural in professional conversations. Now let's move into more reflective language, describing your thoughts, not just your actions. During the afternoon, I realized just how important managing my time really is. I understood that planning ahead made everything easier. It gave me a real sense of control over my responsibilities. Reflecting like this adds a deeper level of sophistication to your speaking. Let's try one more guided moment. Imagine someone asks you, "What was the hardest part of your afternoon?" You might answer, "The hardest part was staying focused after lunch. I felt drowsy, but I made myself keep going and stay productive." Or you might say, "Juggling several tasks at once was tough, but it actually helped me get better at multitasking." Now let's bring all these layers together into one full, immersive description. My afternoon was both demanding and rewarding at the same time. I spent most of it working through urgent assignments, and there were moments I felt genuinely overwhelmed by everything on my plate. Still, I stayed organized and handled my priorities efficiently. By the time the afternoon ended, I felt tired but proud of everything I'd gotten done. This mix of action, emotion, reflection, and vocabulary is exactly what turns basic English into fluent daily storytelling. Take a moment now to think through your own afternoon. What did you do after lunch? Who did you talk to? What obstacles came up? How did you feel through it all? The more detail you bring in, the more natural your storytelling becomes. And just like that, your day starts moving into the evening, a time when things slow down, reflection deepens, and conversations become more personal. As the afternoon winds down, your day starts shifting into evening, and this part of the day has a completely different emotional pace. The weight of responsibilities begins to lift. Conversations relax, and your mindset shifts from getting things done to looking back on how things went. Evening English tends to be very expressive, since it mixes actions with feelings, routine with rest, and experience with reflection. Imagine someone asks, "What do you usually do in the evening?" A beginner might simply say, "I watch TV in the evening." That's totally fine, but let's build on it. In the evening, I usually watch some TV to unwind. I enjoy movies or music. Sometimes I take a walk instead. Each addition makes it sound more like you, more descriptive. Let's put together a simple evening story. In the evening, I get home from work. I'm usually a little tired, so I rest for a bit. After that, I have tea with my family and we talk about how our day went. Then I either watch some TV or spend time on my phone. This kind of everyday description is really the foundation of conversational fluency. Now let's add a bit more detail. When I get home in the evening, the first thing I do is change my clothes and freshen up. It really helps me unwind after a long day. Then I sit down with my family and we catch up on each other's day. These little conversations make me feel closer to them. Notice how feelings come right back into the story here. Evening English often includes vocabulary about family life. You might say, I help my kids with their homework. I spend time with my parents. I cook dinner together with my partner. We sit down and watch something together. These sentences reflect everyday life at home. Let's build out one of these family moments. In the evening, I usually help my younger brother with his schoolwork. English is tricky for him, so I try to guide him patiently. Honestly, teaching him also helps me understand things better myself. It's really a bonding experience for the two of us. This is a great example of storytelling built around relationships. Now let's talk about ways people relax in the evening, since that's such a common theme. You might say, in the evening I take a walk in the park. I listen to relaxing music. I read a book. Sometimes I just sit quietly with my thoughts. These phrases add more personality to how you describe your lifestyle. Let's build a fuller relaxation scene. After getting dinner ready, I like to head outside for a short walk. The evening air feels really refreshing, and it helps clear my head after a long day. Sometimes I'll listen to a podcast while I walk, which makes it both relaxing and productive at the same time. Vocabulary like this makes your lifestyle descriptions feel more real. Let's introduce some language around emotional winding down. By evening, I usually feel mentally worn out. I really look forward to relaxing. Evenings feel calm to me. It's when I finally slow down. These kinds of phrases capture that psychological shift. Let's also try some contrast sentences. Even though my day is hectic, my evenings tend to be calm. Even when I'm tired, I still make time for my family. While work can be stressful, my evenings help balance things out. Using contrast like this makes your English sound more expressive. Now let's talk about dinner conversations, since food is such a natural topic in daily life. You could say, in the evening I eat dinner with my family. We usually eat together. Dinner is honestly my favorite meal of the day. These are simple, universally relatable sentences. Let's build that out further. We usually sit down for dinner around 8 p.m. While we eat, we talk about what happened during the day. Sometimes the conversation turns to news, future plans, or family matters. It's really the moment when everyone comes back together. Let's add some more advanced vocabulary here too. Instead of tired, you could say physically exhausted, mentally drained, or completely worn out. Instead of relaxed, you might say at ease, peaceful, or unwound. Precise vocabulary like this really signals a higher level of fluency. Let's use some of that vocabulary in a fuller evening reflection. By the time evening comes around, I often feel mentally drained from everything the day demanded of me. Sitting with my family really helps me unwind. Just being around them brings a sense of calm that recharges me. Expressing emotion like this helps your listener really connect with what you're saying. Now let's talk about hobbies in the evening, since they're great material for conversation. You might say, in the evening I play guitar, I paint, I exercise, I learn new skills online. These sentences show a side of you focused on personal growth. Let's expand one of these hobby examples. In the evenings, I like to spend time improving myself. Lately, I've been getting into photography, watching tutorials, practicing editing, and experimenting with lighting. It gives me a creative outlet outside of my everyday responsibilities. This kind of language reflects a deeper, more intellectual kind of fluency. Let's add some social interaction too. Sometimes I meet up with friends in the evening. We go out for dinner or sit at a cafe and talk for hours. It really helps me relax and step away from work stress for a while. Let's deepen that example a little more. Last evening, I finally caught up with two close friends I hadn't seen in a while. We swapped stories, laughed about old memories, and talked about our plans for the future. The conversation was so enjoyable that time just flew by without us noticing. Storytelling filled with nostalgia like this really shows emotional fluency. Now let's look at unexpected evening moments. Yesterday evening, the power went out in my neighborhood. At first it was annoying, but then my whole family gathered in one room and just started talking. Surprisingly, it turned into one of those moments we'll actually remember fondly. Turning an inconvenience into a story like this really strengthens your storytelling skills. Let's move toward deeper evening reflection, since evenings are often when people naturally think things over. You might say, evenings are when I reflect on my day. I think about what went well and what didn't. I evaluate how I'm doing overall. This kind of reflective language shows a higher level of thinking in your speech. Let's expand that reflection a bit more. Every evening, I take a few minutes to look back on my day. I ask myself if I used my time well. I think about what I accomplished and where I fell short. This habit really helps me grow, both personally and professionally. Now let's try a guided evening speaking exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "How do you usually spend your evenings?" You might answer, "My evenings are usually pretty calm and consistent. Once I'm home, I take some time to relax, spend time with my family, and then focus on something for myself, like reading or picking up a new skill." Honestly, it's my favorite part of the day. Now let's bring everything together into one complete, natural evening story. By the time evening rolls around, I start to slow down mentally. Once I'm home, I freshen up and sit down with my family. We have tea together and talk about our day. Later, I head out for a short walk to clear my mind. After dinner, I either watch something educational or spend time on personal growth. Evenings feel peaceful to me because they give me a chance to reconnect with myself. Can you sense how the storytelling gets richer here? It's no longer just about routine, it's about experience, emotion, and reflection. Let's now move gently into late evening and nighttime, where fluency becomes even more introspective, where you talk about your thoughts, your plans, your gratitude, and your rest. Because describing your day doesn't really end when dinner does. It ends when you take a moment to reflect on the whole journey. As evening fades into night, the pace of everything slows down even more. Conversations get quieter, movements get slower, and your mind starts pulling together everything that happened during the day. Nighttime English tends to be very reflective, since it gives you space to summarize, evaluate, and process your day emotionally. This is the point where fluency shifts from talking about actions to expressing your inner thoughts. Imagine someone asks, "What do you usually do at night?" A beginner might just say, "I sleep at night." Clear and correct, but let's build on it. At night, I have dinner and then head to bed. Before falling asleep, I check my phone. Sometimes I watch a movie before bed. These small additions already start forming a real routine. Let's build a simple nighttime story together. At night, once I finish dinner, I relax for a bit. I watch some TV or scroll through my phone. After that, I brush my teeth and get ready for bed. Then I lie down and drift off to sleep. This is the foundation of everyday English. Now let's add a bit more atmosphere and detail. At night, once I'm done with my responsibilities, I like to slow down gradually. I dim the lights in my room and just sit quietly for a while. Sometimes I put on some calm music. It helps my mind settle before I sleep. Nighttime vocabulary often centers around calm and comfort. Let's look at some language around getting ready for bed. You might say, "Before sleeping, I set my alarm. I lay out my clothes for tomorrow. I tidy my desk. I plan out my schedule." These habits show a sense of responsibility in how you speak. Let's expand one of these into a full example. Before going to bed, I always get things ready for the next day. I set my alarm, pick out my clothes, and jot down a short to-do list. This habit keeps me feeling organized and takes some of the stress out of my mornings. Now let's talk about nighttime reflection, since this is really where advanced fluency starts to shine. You might say, "At night, I think back on my day. I remember what I did. I think about where I went wrong." Reflective language like this adds real psychological depth. Let's build that into a fuller reflection. Before I go to sleep, I spend a few quiet moments thinking about how my day went. I think about what I got done and what I could do better. It helps me learn from my day and get mentally ready for tomorrow. Speaking this way shows real maturity in communication. Now let's bring in gratitude, which is a more advanced emotional layer. You might say, "At night, I feel thankful for my day. I appreciate the good moments. I'm grateful for my family and my health." Vocabulary around gratitude adds emotional depth to how you express yourself. Let's expand that idea. Every night before bed, I remind myself of a few things I'm thankful for. Even on a stressful day, I try to find at least one good moment. This mindset helps me fall asleep more peacefully. Let's also talk about mental decompression. By nighttime, my mind often feels overloaded. I feel mentally exhausted. Sleep feels like a reset button. This kind of recovery-related vocabulary shows up a lot in nighttime English. Let's weave that into a story. By the time I get into bed, I usually feel mentally worn out from everything the day threw at me. Lying down feels comforting, almost like my mind is finally allowed to rest. Using figurative language like this shows a higher level of fluency. Now let's practice talking about sleep itself. I fall asleep quickly. Sometimes I have trouble sleeping. I sleep deeply. I wake up in the middle of the night. Vocabulary about sleep comes up often in everyday conversation. Let's expand that a bit. Some nights I fall asleep almost instantly because I'm physically tired. But on more stressful days, my mind keeps racing, which makes it harder to fall asleep. On nights like that, I try some breathing exercises to calm down. Now let's go even deeper into introspection. Nighttime is when I think about my personal growth. I think about my long-term goals. I evaluate how far I've come. Reflections like these take the conversation from routine into something more meaningful. Let's expand on that. Late at night, when everything is quiet, I often find myself thinking about my future. I ask myself whether I'm heading in the right direction, and those thoughts push me to keep improving. This kind of purpose-driven language reflects a more advanced mindset. Now let's put together one full nighttime story and let it unfold naturally. After dinner, I take some time to relax. Maybe I watch something light or just talk with my family. Later, I get ready for the next day by setting my alarm and organizing what I'll need. Before falling asleep, I think back over my day, what I accomplished, what challenged me, and what I learned. Finally, I lie down, close my eyes, and let my mind settle into rest. Let's talk about closure now. By the end of the night, I feel calm, I feel satisfied, I feel hopeful about tomorrow. Expressions like these bring your daily storytelling full circle. Let's build that into a reflection. As I wrap up my day, I feel a real sense of closure. No matter how hectic or difficult the day was, night brings a kind of emotional balance. It reminds me that every day comes to an end and a new one always begins. Let's try one more guided exercise, a full summary of your day. Imagine someone asks, "How was your day overall?" You might say, "Overall, my day was pretty productive. I got my responsibilities done, spent time with my family, and made space to relax. There were a few stressful moments, but I handled them fine. I feel good as the day comes to a close." Now let's push that summary even further. Looking back on the whole day, I'd say it was both challenging and rewarding. I dealt with a lot of responsibilities, learned a few new things, and had some really meaningful conversations, even with a bit of fatigue along the way. I feel thankful and motivated heading into tomorrow. This is where everyday routine English turns into something closer to storytelling about your life. Take a moment now to mentally walk through your entire day from morning until night. Think about how many things you did, how many emotions you felt, how many conversations you had. Every single one of those is material you can use to speak fluent English. And once you can describe all of it smoothly, your fluency stops feeling like a school subject and starts feeling like something personal. Because real fluency in English isn't about memorizing complicated grammar rules, it's about being able to tell the story of your life clearly, confidently, and naturally. Now that we've walked through a full day together from morning to night, let's move to an even deeper level of fluency, one where you're not just describing your routine, but narrating your day as a complete experience. Because when someone asks you, "Tell me about your day," they're not just asking what you did. They want to know how you experienced it, how you felt, what you took away from it, and how it shaped your thinking. At a beginner level, you might simply say, "My day was good. I went to work, came home, and slept." And that's completely fine because fluency always starts with clarity, but as your English develops, your answers naturally become more layered and expressive. Let's slowly build on that same idea. My day was pretty productive. I got my work done on time. I had some good conversations with coworkers, and in the evening, I spent some quality time relaxing with my family. Notice how this version now includes accomplishment, connection, and emotional closure. Now let's move toward real storytelling. Imagine you're talking to a friend who genuinely wants to hear about your day. You might say, "Today was one of those really fast-paced days. From the second I woke up, there was something waiting for me to handle. I barely had a moment to breathe, but by the end of it, I felt like I'd really accomplished something." This kind of narration brings in tempo and atmosphere. Let's add some situational detail. In the morning, I had an important presentation. I was nervous going in, but once I started talking, my confidence kicked in. It actually went better than I expected, which lifted my mood for the rest of the day. Now let's explore how to talk about a rough day, because not everything goes smoothly, and fluency also means being able to talk about difficulty. You might say, "My day was pretty stressful. I had several deadlines coming up, and I struggled to manage my time well. At one point, I felt completely overwhelmed, but I took a short break and got my priorities back in order." Language like this shows a more advanced level of speaking. Let's build out some vocabulary around emotional resilience. Instead of stressed, you might say under pressure, mentally strained, or overburdened. Instead of happy, you could say relieved, satisfied, or content. These small shifts in word choice really show a more sophisticated command of the language. Let's bring in some emotional transformation too. Even though my day started off stressful, it slowly got better. Getting my tasks done brought a real sense of relief, and by evening, I felt much lighter emotionally. This kind of arc adds a real narrative shape to your storytelling. Let's revisit social storytelling as well. One of the best moments of my day was running into an old friend completely by chance. We hadn't talked in years, and our conversation brought back so many memories. It reminded me just how valuable real friendships are. Now let's look at reflective, lesson-based language, since more advanced speakers often talk about what they learned from their day. You might say, "Today taught me a lot about patience. I realized that staying calm really does help solve problems faster." Let's expand that thought. Throughout the day, a few situations really tested my patience. At first, I reacted emotionally, but eventually I realized that thinking calmly leads to much better outcomes. It was a small lesson, but a meaningful one. Now let's move into thinking ahead toward the future. By the end of the day, I felt inspired to do better. I told myself I'd manage my time more wisely tomorrow and stay more focused on what really matters. Talking about your plans like this connects what you experienced today with how you want to grow going forward. Let's build up some more advanced vocabulary. Instead of saying busy day, you could say demanding day, eventful day, or hectic schedule. Instead of good day, try fulfilling day, rewarding experience, or memorable day. Choosing more precise words really strengthens the tone of your story. Let's put that vocabulary into a full example. Overall, my day was demanding, yet genuinely fulfilling. I ran into several challenges, but getting through them left me with a real sense of accomplishment. It reminded me that being productive usually takes real effort. Now let's talk about how time itself can feel different, rather than just what happened during the day. You might say the day flew by, or time seemed to drag, or I couldn't believe how fast the hours went. Phrases like these add a real sense of experience to your storytelling. Let's expand on that. My schedule was so packed that the whole day flew by before I even noticed. By the time I checked the clock, it was already evening. It felt like time had sped up. Describing how time felt like this makes your storytelling more immersive. Now let's talk about your energy levels throughout the day. I started off feeling full of energy. By the afternoon, I was drained, but after resting in the evening, my energy came back. Describing your physical and mental rhythm like this creates a more complete picture. Let's build that into a reflection. My energy went up and down throughout the day. Morning motivation kept me going strong. Afternoon fatigue slowed me down a bit, but relaxing in the evening helped me find my balance again. This kind of balanced storytelling shows more advanced expression. Now let's try a guided exercise. Imagine someone asks, if you had to sum up your day in one word, what would it be? You might say productive because you got through your important tasks, or challenging because unexpected problems came up, or rewarding because you learned something valuable. Summing things up in one word like this builds your ability to evaluate and express your experience. Let's take that one-word idea further. If I had to describe my day in a single word, I'd say transformative, because I didn't just get my work done, I also learned something new about myself. Vocabulary at this level really shows you're approaching advanced fluency. Now let's put together one complete, immersive story about a whole day. Let it flow naturally as you think it through. Looking back at my day as a whole, it was full of movement, responsibility, and reflection. From the moment I started my morning commitments to my quiet thoughts late at night, every part of the day had its own experience. I dealt with pressure, solved problems, had good conversations, and found a few peaceful moments too. By the time night came, I was physically tired, but mentally, I felt like I'd gained something. Let's bring gratitude and growth together now. Days like this remind me how important balance really is. Getting things done matters, but so does taking care of how you feel. Learning to manage both is really part of growing up. This kind of thoughtful language brings a nice sense of closure to your storytelling. Take a moment now and imagine describing your whole day to someone who genuinely cares about your life. You wouldn't just use short sentences, you'd tell the story, reflect on it, and express how you felt. That's the level of fluency you're building here. Because advanced English really isn't about complicated grammar rules, it's about telling a story that means something. It's about turning your everyday routine into a fluent narrative about your life. And the more you practice this daily, the less your English will sound like something you studied, and the more it'll sound like something you actually live. As your fluency keeps growing, the next step is learning to talk about your day not just as a story, but as part of a conversation. In real life, you rarely give long monologues. Instead, you respond to questions, add more detail when someone's interested, and adjust how you describe things depending on who you're talking to. This kind of flexibility is what turns structured speaking into truly natural communication. Imagine someone casually asks you, "So, how was your day?" At a beginner level, you might just say, "It was good." That's polite, but it kind of ends the conversation right there. To keep things going, you can add a little more. "It was good, I was pretty busy at work today." Now the other person actually has something to respond to. Let's build that out a bit more. "It was good, I had a lot to get done, but I managed to finish everything on time." How about you? Notice how you describe your day and then turn the question back around. That's real conversational fluency at work. Now let's try a workplace-style dialogue. Imagine you're talking to a coworker. "My day was pretty demanding. I had back-to-back meetings all morning, and by the afternoon I was mentally exhausted, but we finally got the project plan finalized." This shows fluency suited to a professional setting. If your coworker then asks, "What was the toughest part?" you might say, "Honestly, the hardest part was presenting our progress report. I felt the pressure because senior management was in the room, but it actually went smoother than I expected." Now let's look at a school-related conversation. A classmate asks, "How was class today?" You respond, "It was interesting, actually. We had a really detailed lecture on economics. At first, it felt pretty complicated, but once the professor gave us some examples, it clicked." Reflecting on your studies like this builds a more intellectual kind of fluency. Let's continue that conversation. "After the lecture, I spent some time in the library working on my assignment. It took a lot of research, but I felt really satisfied once I finished it." Adding a sense of satisfaction like this brings emotional closure to the story. Now let's look at a more social conversation. A friend asks, "Did anything fun happen today?" You might say, "Actually, yeah. I ran into an old friend during lunch completely by accident. We hadn't talked in years. It was such a nice surprise." Let's take that story a bit further. "We ended up talking for almost an hour. We caught each other up on our lives, our careers, our goals." Moments like that really make an ordinary day feel special. Adding warmth like this makes your conversations feel more genuine. Now let's talk about how to handle a not-so-great day, because not every day goes well. If someone asks, "How was your day?" you might say, "Honestly, it was pretty stressful. I had too much to do and not enough time to do it." Being honest about a tough day is part of speaking naturally. Let's build on that honesty a bit. "There were moments I felt completely overwhelmed, but I tried to stay calm and just focus on one thing at a time. In the end, I got through it all." Talking about resilience like this makes what you say feel more genuine and believable. Now let's practice giving a more balanced response. "My day had its ups and downs. Work was pretty demanding, but spending the evening with my family really helped balance things out." Speaking this way, acknowledging both the good and the tough parts, shows real emotional awareness. Let's talk about follow-up questions. Since fluent speakers don't just share their own story, they keep the conversation going. After talking about your day, you might ask, "How was your day? Did anything interesting come up? Were you busy too?" Conversation, after all, goes both ways. Let's look at some richer vocabulary for these conversations. Instead of very busy, you could say extremely hectic, packed with responsibilities, or nonstop. Instead of fun, you might say enjoyable, memorable, or refreshing. The words you choose really shape the tone of the conversation. Let's put some of that into a dialogue. "My day was extremely hectic. I barely had time to catch my breath. But getting everything done gave me a really refreshing sense of accomplishment." Ending on that kind of resolution makes the story land better. Now let's look at an evening conversation. A family member asks, "How did your day go?" You might say, "It was productive overall. I handled my responsibilities well, even though I was pretty tired by the evening. Still, I felt good about what I got done." Conversations with family often blend talk about work with how you're actually feeling. Let's add some warmth to that. "Talking through my day with my family really helps me let go of stress." Having their support makes even the hard days feel a little lighter. Now let's talk about pacing your storytelling. Fluent speakers naturally adjust how much detail they give based on how interested the other person seems. If they seem curious, you say more. If not, you keep it short. For example, my day was busy. I had an important client presentation. If they want to hear more, you continue. I spent hours preparing for it, and thankfully, it went really well. Adjusting like this is a sign of more advanced fluency. Let's try a quick back and forth conversation. How was your day? Pretty productive. Actually, I got my main tasks done early. That's great. Did anything tricky come up? Yeah, I had to fix an unexpected technical issue, but it actually taught me a lot about problem solving. Real conversations naturally include this kind of exchange. Curiosity and follow-up. Let's also look at being emotionally open in conversation. I won't lie, today felt really emotionally draining. I had a lot on my mind, but honestly, talking about it now is making me feel a bit better. Being emotionally honest like this makes conversations feel more genuine. Now let's bring in a little humor. My day was so busy that I didn't even notice when lunchtime came and went. I basically felt like I was racing the clock. A bit of light humor adds personality to how you speak. Let's build on that. At one point, I had so many browser tabs open that even my laptop seemed stressed out. Playful little exaggerations like this make you sound more naturally conversational. Now let's move into reflective conversation. Someone asks, "What did you learn today?" You might say, "I learned that patience really matters." Rushing through things just leads to more mistakes. Slowing down actually made me more productive. Reflecting on lessons like this shows real maturity in how you speak. Let's expand that a little. Every day teaches you something new, honestly. Today reminded me that staying organized really cuts down on stress. Now let's put together one full, natural conversation about your day. If I had to sum up my whole day for someone, I'd say it was a mix of getting things done and reflecting on them. Work kept me busy through the morning and afternoon. I ran into a few challenges, but I handled them calmly. By evening, spending time with my family helped recharge me. All in all, it was a satisfying day. Now pause for a second and imagine yourself actually having this conversation, speaking calmly, naturally, and confidently about your day without hunting for the right words. That's when fluency starts to feel like a real conversation instead of something rehearsed. And once you're comfortable talking about your day this way, you'll be ready to use English confidently in real situations. As talking about your day conversationally starts to feel more natural, the next level of fluency is learning to express deeper emotional nuance. Because advanced English isn't just about what happened, it's about how strongly you experienced it, and how those moments affected your mood, motivation, energy, and mindset. Imagine someone asks you again, "How was your day?" But this time, instead of a general answer, you respond with more emotional detail. You might say, "My day was emotionally exhausting, not because of the physical work, but because I had to deal with a lot of mentally demanding situations." Notice how this goes beyond simply describing your routine and moves into something more psychological. Let's build some vocabulary around emotional intensity instead. Of tired, you could say emotionally drained, mentally fatigued, or psychologically overwhelmed. Instead of happy, you might say deeply fulfilled, genuinely content, or emotionally uplifted. Expressions like these show a more advanced emotional vocabulary. Let's weave that into a full story. Today was one of those days that really tested my patience. I had to stay calm in situations that were honestly pretty frustrating internally. By the end of the day, I felt emotionally drained, but also proud that I handled it all with maturity. Contrasting emotions like this gives your story more strength. Now let's talk about days that motivate you rather than exhaust you, because not every day drains your energy. You might say, "My day was incredibly motivating. I finally achieved a few goals I'd been putting off for weeks." Vocabulary around achievement really elevates the tone of your storytelling. Let's expand that. Getting those tasks done gave me a real boost of confidence. It reminded me that progress really comes from staying consistent. Now let's talk about disappointment, since that's an important emotion too. You might say, "Honestly, my day didn't go as planned. I ran into some setbacks that slowed my progress." Being honest about disappointment like this makes your conversations feel more real. Let's expand that emotion a bit more. "I had pretty high expectations for a meeting today, but it didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped." At first, I felt a little discouraged, but then I reminded myself that setbacks don't last forever. Bouncing back like this in your storytelling shows real emotional maturity. Now let's talk about managing stress. Throughout the day, I ran into situations that could have easily overwhelmed me. But I made a conscious effort to stay composed and focus on solutions instead of problems. Vocabulary around staying in control like this reflects a more advanced level of fluency. Let's go a bit deeper with that reflection. I've realized that stress often comes from overthinking things. Once I stopped overcomplicating things in my head, handling my responsibilities got a lot easier. Now let's talk about excitement, because emotional intensity isn't always about stress. You might say today was incredibly exciting, something unexpected happened that made the whole day memorable. Let's expand on that. I got some news I'd been waiting on for a while, and hearing it gave me this sudden rush of happiness. It instantly lifted my mood and made all the effort I'd put in feel worth it. Let's also talk about gratitude mixed with struggle. Even though my day was tough, I still feel grateful because every challenge taught me something worthwhile. Let's take that further. I've come to realize that hard days actually shape you more than easy ones do. They're what build real resilience. Now let's try some sensory storytelling, describing how the day physically felt. You might say the day felt heavy, slow, almost overwhelming, or the day felt light and energetic, like everything just flowed. Let's expand that. From the second I woke up, I could just sense it was going to be a demanding day. The pace never really let up, and even the atmosphere at work felt intense. Let's talk about inner dialogue too. More advanced speakers often describe what they were thinking to themselves throughout the day. You might say at one point I told myself to just stay calm and keep going, or I reminded myself that tough moments don't last forever. Let's expand that. During a stressful moment, I paused and had a quiet word with myself. I told myself panicking wasn't going to help, and that little pep talk helped me regain control. Now let's talk about recovering your energy. By evening, I made a conscious choice to shift into relaxation mode. I gave myself time to decompress, and it really helped restore my emotional balance. Let's deepen that. I've realized that managing your emotional energy matters just as much as managing your time. Both shape how fulfilling your day feels. Let's try a guided exercise. Imagine someone asks, what emotion summed up your day? You might say resilience because despite the challenges, you stayed strong, or gratitude because you noticed the small good moments. Or motivation because you made real progress. Let's take that further. If I had to describe my day in one word emotionally, I'd call it transformational because it pushed me outside my comfort zone and helped me grow. Now let's bring emotional nuance into one full story and just let it flow. My day wasn't just a list of tasks, it was really an emotional journey. There were tense moments that tested my patience, proud moments that boosted my confidence, and quiet moments of reflection that helped me understand myself a little better. By nighttime, I felt emotionally tired but somehow mentally stronger. Pause for a second and think about your own emotional journey today, not just what you did, but what you actually felt. Being able to express emotion clearly in English is what makes your fluency feel authentic and human. That's the shift from just functional English to truly expressive English, from simply describing your life to actually communicating your experience of it. As your fluency keeps growing, the next shift happens when your English starts sounding more natural and stylistically rich, closer to how a native speaker would talk. This is where idioms, phrasal verbs, and metaphors start shaping how you describe your day, since native speakers rarely talk about their routines in plain, literal terms. Instead, they add color to their experiences with expressive language that conveys emotion and personality. Imagine someone asks again, "How was your day?" At a more advanced level, instead of saying, "I was very busy," you might say, "I was swamped with work," or "I had a lot on my plate," or even, "It was nonstop from morning till night." Phrases like these instantly make your English sound more fluent and natural. Let's look at some idioms around workload. You could say, "My schedule was packed. I was juggling a bunch of responsibilities." "I barely had a moment to breathe." Each of these paints a picture instead of just stating a fact. Let's put them into a story. "Today was incredibly demanding. I was juggling several responsibilities at once. My calendar was packed with meetings, and I barely had time to catch my breath. Still, somehow I managed to stay on track." Now let's look at idioms about time pressure. Instead of I had little time, you might say I was racing against the clock, or time just slipped through my fingers, or I was pressed for time all day. Let's build that into a story. All afternoon, I felt like I was racing against the clock. Deadlines were closing in fast, and every minute felt precious. It forced me to stay completely focused. Let's look at productivity idioms too. I hit the ground running this morning means you started the day with a lot of energy. I got the ball rolling early means you kicked things into motion quickly. Let's use that. I hit the ground running today. I started working almost right after I woke up, and that early momentum carried me through the rest of the day. Now let's move to idioms about emotion. Instead of I was nervous, you could say I had butterflies in my stomach or I felt on edge. Let's expand that. Right before my presentation, I had butterflies in my stomach and my hands felt a little cold, but once I started talking, my confidence kicked in. Let's also look at idioms about success. Everything fell into place. The plan worked like a charm. It turned out better than expected. Let's build that into a story. After weeks of getting ready, the project presentation finally happened today, and thankfully everything fell into place. The feedback was great and I felt genuinely satisfied. Now let's look at idioms for difficulty. I hit a roadblock, things didn't go as planned, I had to think on my feet. Let's expand that. Partway through my work, I hit a roadblock, a technical glitch threw things off, and I had to think on my feet to find another way forward quickly. Let's talk about phrasal verbs too, since they're such a key part of sounding fluent. Instead of continue, you might say carry on. Instead of cancel, call off. Instead of start, kick off. Let's use a few of these. After lunch, I carried on with my work. I'd planned to meet a friend, but we had to call it off because of scheduling issues, so I used that time to catch up on some pending tasks instead. Now let's look at idioms about bouncing back. I bounced back, I got back on track, I picked myself up. Let's expand that. Even though the morning got off to a rough start, I bounced back by the afternoon, I reorganized my tasks and got my productivity back. Let's also look at relaxation idioms. I unwound in the evening, I took it easy, I put my feet up. Let's use that. After a hectic day, I finally put my feet up in the evening, put on some music, and let myself unwind. Now let's move into metaphors for describing your day. Instead of literal language, you describe your day symbolically. You might say my day felt like a roller coaster, or it was a marathon, not a sprint, or it felt like navigating through waves. Let's expand one. Today felt like a roller coaster. Moments of stress climbed steeply, followed by moments of relief that brought things back down. It was intense but memorable. Let's also try energy-related metaphors. By afternoon, my battery was running low. I felt recharged after resting. Metaphors about technology like these are really common in everyday English. Let's use one. After back-to-back meetings, I felt like my mental battery was running low, so a short walk really helped me recharge. Now let's try summing up a whole day using idioms. If I had to sum up my day, I'd say it was a whirlwind, fast-paced, unpredictable, but ultimately rewarding. Let's deepen that. The day moved so fast that I barely had time to process it as it happened, but looking back, it really was productive and meaningful. Let's try a guided exercise using at least 3 idioms. My schedule was packed, I was racing against the clock, but by evening, everything fell into place. Layering idioms like this shows a really high level of conversational fluency. Now let's bring idioms, phrasal verbs, and metaphors together into one full story and just let it flow naturally. I hit the ground running this morning. My schedule was packed and I was juggling several responsibilities at once. By the afternoon, I felt like I was racing against the clock. At one point, I hit a roadblock, but I thought on my feet and got back on track. By evening, I finally put my feet up and let myself unwind. Looking back, the whole day felt like a roller coaster, exhausting, but ultimately fulfilling. Pause for a second and notice how different this sounds compared to beginner-level narration. It's vivid, expressive, and full of energy. Because real advanced fluency isn't just about grammatical accuracy, it's about speaking with color, turning an ordinary routine into a story worth listening to. And once you get comfortable with idioms and phrasal verbs, your English naturally starts to sound fluent, almost effortless. As your fluency keeps developing, the next stage moves past just describing events or emotions and steps into deeper reflection about balance, priorities, personal growth, and mindset. Advanced speakers don't just talk about what happened during their day, they talk about what it meant. Imagine someone asks you, "What did your day teach you?" That question shifts the conversation from simple narration into real reflection. You might say, "Today taught me how important it is to stay organized. Once I had a clear plan for my tasks, everything felt a lot more manageable." A response like that shows real thoughtfulness. Let's expand on that kind of reflection. Throughout the day, I notice just how much my mindset affects how productive I am. When I approached things calmly, they felt manageable. But the moment I got stressed, even simple tasks felt overwhelming. Contrasts like this show real self-awareness. Let's also talk about time management, since it's a common theme in more advanced reflection. You might say, "One thing I really understood today is how valuable time is. Every hour counts, used well it brings results, wasted it just creates pressure." Let's deepen that a bit. There were moments today when I felt time slipping away, and it reminded me that discipline isn't really about working harder, it's about working smarter. Now let's talk about work-life balance, since a lot of people reflect on whether their day actually felt balanced. You might say, "My day was productive, but I wish I'd taken more breaks." I've realized that non-stop work drains your energy in the long run. Let's expand that. By evening, I felt physically there but mentally somewhere else. That's when it hit me that being productive without any rest just isn't sustainable. Let's talk about personal growth too. You might say every day adds something to who I'm becoming. Even small routines shape your discipline. Let's build on that. Today's challenges reminded me that growth rarely feels comfortable. It usually shows up disguised as pressure, responsibility, and accountability. Now let's reflect on resilience. Looking back, I handled today's stress a lot better than I would have a year ago, and that realization made me genuinely proud of how far I've come. Let's deepen that. I've noticed how differently I react to problems now. I used to panic. Now I pause, think it through, and respond calmly. Let's talk about motivation too. By the end of the day, I felt genuinely motivated to keep improving myself. Days like this push me to stay consistent. Let's expand that. Even though the day wore me out, it reinforced something I already believed, that persistence leads to progress. Just realizing that made the whole day feel worth it. Now let's talk about purpose. Sometimes I ask myself whether what I'm doing day to day actually lines up with my bigger goals. Today felt aligned, and that gave me a real sense of peace. Let's deepen that. When your daily effort connects to something bigger you're working toward, even the exhausting days start to feel meaningful, more like investments than burdens. Let's revisit gratitude and growth again, but at a more advanced level. I've started appreciating even the stressful days because they show me strengths I didn't know I had. Let's expand that. Today reminded me that patience, focus, and emotional control aren't just personality traits, they're skills, and they grow the more you practice them. Now let's talk about how your surroundings shape your day. You might say, "The atmosphere at work today felt really intense." Everyone seemed focused, and that pushed me to stay productive too. Let's deepen that. Energy really is contagious. Being around motivated people made me more disciplined too. Let's also talk about shifting your mindset. I used to see busy days as stressful. Now I see them as a chance to grow. Let's expand that. Changing how I think about things didn't reduce my responsibilities, it changed how I experienced them. Let's try a guided reflection. Imagine someone asks, "What did today teach you about yourself?" You might say, "Today taught me that I'm more capable than I gave myself credit for. I stayed calm through situations that would have stressed me out before." Now let's put together one full, deep reflection and let it unfold slowly. If I really think about my day, it wasn't just about tasks and responsibilities. It was about patience, discipline, and emotional growth. Every interaction taught me something. Every challenge tested me, and every solution I found made me a little stronger. By the end of the day, I didn't just feel tired, I felt like I'd grown. Take a moment now and think about your own reflection tonight, not just what you did, but what you took away from it. Because once you start talking about lessons you've learned, your English starts to sound philosophical. And once it sounds philosophical, it becomes powerful, memorable, genuinely advanced. As your reflection on the day naturally starts pointing forward, the next stage of fluency kicks in, talking not just about what happened or what you learned, but about what's coming next. Advanced speakers tend to connect their day to their future plans, their ambitions, and their bigger vision. This future-focused way of talking turns everyday English into something much more purposeful. Imagine someone asks you after a day like this, "What are your plans for tomorrow?" A beginner might just say, "Tomorrow I will work." simple and correct, but let's build on it. Tomorrow, I plan to finish up my pending tasks. I want to start my day a bit earlier. I'll try to stay more organized. Small additions like these already sound more intentional. Let's build a fuller reflection connected to planning. After thinking back on today, I've decided I want to manage my time better tomorrow. I want to prioritize the important stuff in the morning so my afternoon feels less rushed. Notice how reflection naturally leads into planning. Let's talk about self-improvement too. You might say one thing I want to work on is my focus. I noticed today that distractions really slowed me down, so tomorrow I'll try to cut down on interruptions. Let's expand that. I also want to start taking short breaks between tasks. I realized today that working nonstop drains my mental energy faster than I expected. Now let's talk about bigger goals, since advanced speakers often connect their daily routine to something larger. You might say, every productive day gets me a little closer to my long-term goals. What I did today might seem small, but it adds up to something bigger. Let's expand that. I try to remind myself that consistency matters more than intensity. Even small, steady progress adds up to real change over time. Let's also talk about dreaming ahead a bit. Sometimes at night, I picture the kind of future I want to build, achieving my goals, developing new skills, living the life I really want. Let's deepen that. Thinking about my dreams like this motivates me to take my daily actions seriously. It's a reminder that even an ordinary day plays a part in building something bigger down the road. Now let's talk about career growth specifically. You might say, after everything today, I feel more determined to grow professionally. I want to build skills that make me more capable. Let's expand that. I've come to understand that growth doesn't just happen on its own. It takes real, deliberate effort and a willingness to keep learning and adapting. Let's also talk about personal life goals. Beyond work, I also want to spend more quality time with my family. Today reminded me just how valuable those moments really are. Let's expand that. Success feels incomplete without real emotional connection. I want to keep a good balance between growing professionally and nurturing my relationships. Now let's talk about health too. Feeling tired today reminded me that I need to take better care of my physical health. Tomorrow, I want to wake up earlier and get some exercise in. Let's deepen that. I've come to realize that how productive I am really depends on how well I take care of my body. Energy is what fuels everything else. Now, let's move into talking about future learning goals. Every day also pushes me to keep improving my English. Talking through my day like this helps me practice vocabulary I'd actually use in real life, and I plan to keep doing it regularly. Let's expand that thought. I really believe fluency grows fastest when practice becomes part of your everyday life, rather than something separate you only do occasionally. Let's try a guided exercise. Imagine someone asks, "What will you do differently tomorrow?" You might say, "Tomorrow I'll start earlier, focus on my priorities first, and try to cut out unnecessary distractions." I want the day to feel more structured and satisfying. Now let's bring your future vision into one full reflection and let it flow naturally. Looking ahead after today, I feel genuinely motivated to improve. I want to manage my time better, take care of both my mental and physical health, and stay consistent with my goals. I know real change happens gradually, one day at a time. Let's also talk about hope. Thinking about tomorrow fills me with a sense of optimism. No matter how today went, tomorrow is a fresh start. Let's deepen that. Every new day gives your mind a kind of reset, a chance to begin again with a clearer head and stronger determination. Now let's move toward a bigger picture way of talking about your future. If I keep learning something from each day, I believe that growth will eventually show up in my future. My habits, my discipline, and my mindset will shape where I end up. Let's expand that. I've started seeing each day not as something separate, but as one building block in the larger journey of my life. Now pause for a moment and imagine talking about your future right after describing your day. Notice how your English starts to carry direction and purpose. When you can connect your daily routine to a bigger vision, your English stops sounding like a lesson and starts sounding genuinely inspiring. Once you bring all these layers together, talking about your day becomes something much bigger than simple conversation. It becomes a complete storytelling skill. One where you can describe actions, express emotion, reflect on what you've learned, and connect your everyday life to where you're headed. That's really what defines advanced fluency. You're no longer just stringing together sentences, you're communicating a lived experience. Now imagine someone asks you to walk them through your entire day, start to finish, not in short answers but as one continuous story. At this level, your storytelling flows naturally. You might start with how your morning felt, how you woke up, how your mindset shaped the beginning of your day, then move into everything that filled your afternoon, the challenges, the conversations, and the lessons that quietly took shape along the way. You might say something like, looking back at my whole day, it started with a real sense of purpose. I woke up early, feeling determined to make the most of my time. My morning routine helped me get my thoughts in order, and that clarity carried into my work. As the day went on, things got more demanding, meetings, conversations, tasks all pulling at my attention. There were moments the pressure really built up. But I kept my focus on solutions instead of stress. Notice that fluency here isn't just about vocabulary anymore, it's about connecting your thoughts and guiding the listener through your day almost as if they lived it with you. You might continue, by the afternoon my energy went up and down. There were moments fatigue crept in, but I reminded myself why I'd started in the first place, and that little pep talk kept me moving. I got through my tasks steadily, one at a time, and slowly the pressure eased off. This kind of storytelling blends what you physically went through with your mental resilience. As your story moves into the evening, emotional balance starts to show up. You might describe coming home, shifting from being productive to actually connecting with people, spending time with family, or just finding some quiet on your own. Evening brought a slower rhythm. I let myself unwind. I talked with the people I care about, and those simple conversations melted away the stress I'd been carrying all day. And as night enters the story, reflection becomes the heart of it. Before falling asleep, I thought back over everything that happened, the wins that made me proud, the challenges that made me stronger, and the lessons that shaped how I think. I realized that even an ordinary day holds real growth once you actually stop to look at it. At this level, you're not just describing your day, you're interpreting it. You're pulling meaning out of routine, you're turning everyday life into thoughtful communication. Now imagine describing your day not just factually but symbolically. You might say, my day felt like a journey, one that started with motivation, climbed through pressure, paused for reflection, and settled into gratitude by nightfall. Talking this way shows a fully expressive level of fluency. You might even tie your day to a broader life philosophy. Days like this remind me that progress isn't always visible right away. But every bit of effort quietly adds up to something bigger over time. When you bring all of these pieces together, describing your routine, expressing emotion, using idioms naturally, reflecting thoughtfully, and looking ahead, your English becomes genuinely multidimensional. You can talk about something as small as breakfast or a life lesson from a stressful meeting. You can talk about simply feeling tired or about the emotional resilience you've built through responsibility. You can describe a routine, or you can tell the story of how you've grown, all through the lens of a single day. Let's bring everything together now into one complete, immersive story, letting every layer of fluency blend naturally. Looking back at my whole day, it felt like a full cycle of experience. I started the morning with clarity and intention, got my thoughts organized, and stepped into my responsibilities with focus. As the hours went by, challenges came up that tested my patience and my ability to adapt. There were moments the pressure felt like a lot, but I moved through them with calm determination. By the afternoon, my energy dipped, but I kept going, motivated by what I was working toward. Evening arrived like a gentle pause, giving me space to reconnect both emotionally and mentally. Talking with the people I love brought me back into balance. And as night settled in, reflection gave me perspective. I realized that every task, every conversation, every challenge had added something to my growth. By the time I closed my eyes, I didn't just feel tired. I felt fulfilled, knowing that even an ordinary day had quietly shaped who I'm becoming. Once you can speak like this, your fluency isn't really limited by labels like beginner or advanced anymore, because you've covered the whole range. You can keep it simple when that's all you need. You can add detail when someone's genuinely interested. You can reflect when the moment calls for it. You can tell a full story when you want to be expressive. And most importantly, you can talk about your day, any day, with clarity, emotion, and real confidence. Practicing this consistently is what turns English from something you study into something you actually live. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and for letting me be a part of your English learning journey on Motion English Podcast. I really hope this lesson helped you feel more confident talking about your day, from simple beginner sentences to richer intermediate expressions, all the way to advanced, reflective storytelling. Remember, fluency doesn't happen overnight. It grows through real practice, talking about your routines, your emotions, your thoughts, your everyday experiences. So try to make it a habit to describe your day in English, even if it's just for a few minutes at a time, because the more you talk about your own life, the more natural your English will feel. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in your progress, because every sentence you speak brings you a little closer to real fluency. See you in the next episode of Motion English Podcast.